It's time to start. You guys are here. No need to make you wait any longer. I'm here. I'm tired of waiting too. So, what I'm going to do today is I want to show you a couple of more slides from the last time we met. It's the final couple of slides in chapter 23, and it's by a guy named El Greco. But before I go on to that, let me tell you about what we're going to do after. We'll talk about this for a little while, and then I want to talk to you about quiz 2, which just popped up a couple of minutes ago. And it has to do with finding sources from the library. And I got a PowerPoint, describes everything. And I have an example that I made of what your quiz 2 submission should look like. And so it's kind of complicated. So I want to move right into that and make sure everybody understands what I'm expecting. And then finally, we'll move on to chapter 24. And so it sounds like I might have another participant. Emily, good, glad to see you. Okay, very good. So, and if we have time after that, we'll move on to chapter 24. And so this guy, El Greco, says a kind of an interesting way that the book has chopped up the chapters. This is still chapter 23. High Renaissance and Mannerism in Northern Europe. The next chapter, 24, will have Baroque in Italy and Spain. So all of this, I don't want to confuse you with the way the book has this drawn up, but Spain's kind of an outlier. It's somewhat influenced by what goes on in Northern Europe, and it's also influenced by the Italian culture. But at any rate, view of Toledo, not Toledo, Ohio, Toledo, Spain. And this is, I want to kind of talk about this because he's like really the first great artist from Spain that we've talked about, that we've seen in this book since the time of the Moorish Empire that basically ruled Spain 500 years prior to this. So anyway, we've got Spanish art and El Greco, what a name. Anybody have any idea what this is? Why they call him El Greco? Aha, Wes, you got something.
Well, I know L is I don't know what Greco means though.
L is Greco is Greek, and it's the Greek. And that's what they called him. And he was a guy who was from Greece. His name's Theodoros, something, alphabet soup. But we call him El Greco, and that's what he was known as during his lifetime. And he was born in Greece, studied painting and art in Italy, and went to Spain, where he achieved great artistic success. And I wanted to bring him in because he is painting in a way that we really haven't seen before. And I'll tell you what that's about. view of Toledo. And look at these clouds. Looks like there's an impending thunderstorm. This is like typical El Greco. And when you see how the city walls, the fortifications, it all seems to be kind of halfway lit up. El Greco paints with color, uses color in an entirely different way. And if you ever have the opportunity to see an El Greco, which they have one in Chicago, you'll see that he basically uses a lot of white, a lot of dark, but he also uses a lot of what we would call translucent pigments. David, you're shaking your head. You know what translucent pigments are, I'm taking it.
I just know what the word translucent means.
Right, yeah, okay. Well, they're colors like phthalo green, for example. If you're an oil painter, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Like phthalo green, phthalo blue, alizarin crimson, and they're paints, but they're not opaque. They are, as you know, translucent. And so these paintings take on a very eerie kind of light, which in this case, where he's painting what seems to be an impending thunderstorm, this is like so perfect. But we didn't see people use color that way. And you can see like underneath this would all be painted white, and then on the top of it would be painted translucent blues. Likewise, what you've got going on down here. It gives everything a very strange kind of light. And if you're a painter, you'll recognize that when you see the work of El Greco. And so there's another one in the book here, The Burial of Count Orgaz. And it's painted with the same kind of pigments. It's oil paint, to be sure, the translucent colors used extensively. And he's taken some of the influences from the Italians, as you can see, because the Italians had been, as we just saw on Monday, they were really kind of into painting different levels of reality and hierarchy and things. And so what you have here is the Count, and he's died, and we have the attending priest and the monk. And then we have all of these people, mourners and friends. And you see they're all dressed in Baroque era, early 17th century clothing, especially with the ruffled collars that were so fashionable at the time. And then you see up here, this is the divide between heaven and earth. The angel is coming down to take Count Orgaz's soul. And here's Jesus above everything else, the Virgin Mary, etc. And you can see this is Count Orgaz. He's asking for acceptance, entry into heaven. And so a lot of symbolism, a lot of story, a lot of allegory, and the way that these things are painted is radically different. So what happens here from here on out, while we're talking about Western art, is that we'll have Spaniards included in the mix. It starts with El Greco, and in the Baroque era, we see Velázquez and a few others, and so on and so on, all the way up until the 20th century. We see some great ones like Salvador Dali and Pablo Picasso, all from Spain. So that's what I wanted to show you with this. And guys, I'm gonna have this for you here. Share screen. This is what we want. Good. And let me get to slideshow from beginning. And let me check and make sure that I'm on the share screen that yeah, that's what we good. So quiz 2 just came up. And here is what it should look like under assignments. You see, I'm on assignments here. Actually, I'm on a screenshot from assignments. And it says in an attached docx or PDF, list 4 peer-reviewed sources from the library database on the subject of the artwork you selected for quiz 1. Cut and paste the title, author, source, and abstract / description directly from your search. Format your submission shown in the Mona Lisa sources attached. But I can't click on that because this is just a screenshot. And so going all the way through it, you go here. And here is your Maryville University Library website. And I've typed in Mona Lisa and I hit search. And this is what I get. And this is what I get when I put the full text and peer reviewed options on here. And once you type in your search, soon as you click these boxes, this part just changes automatically. It's actually pretty efficient that way. And so why am I asking you to do this? First, I want you to be familiar with how to use this stuff. Secondly, is that I want you to kind of get a feel for what is available to you. And so these are peer-reviewed, full text, 15,000. And so anyway, I thought, well, I'm going to take a look at this first one, Women in Matrimony. And this is what I get. I click on that, and this is the source. And what I did was, well, I took a screenshot of it, and it tells you where you can find it. The Journal of Language and Literature, Volume 21, Issue 2, pages 294 to 396, 2021. So this is actually a pretty new entry. Okay, so I want to bring you down here, subject terms. And this is like really crucial. This is where you can start to kind of sift through at a glance. Is this source going to give you the kind of information that you want to find? And so it's gender stereotype, gender awareness, side bet theory, and I don't know what that is. Social exchange theory, linguistic theory. Of course, it's from the Journal of Language and Literature. And basically, if you take a look through the descriptions, it says, however, as the change of women's gender consciousness from the conservative to the feminist in the USA of 1950, women began to realize potential and subjectivity. And so this is a very up to date, and it talks about gender stereotype and gender awareness. And so that is actually, that's a very contemporary analysis of the Mona Lisa. Things over 500 years old, and they're still writing about it. It's important. And so what you can do here is, you see up here at the search, I had a keyword, and you can just put in anything you like here and refine your search that way. Media and technique. And so these are the hits that I got. And if you want to move your search in this direction, media and technique, that's always something that'll probably be important and germane to your research, because it's one of the touchstones. What is this made out of? That's why all of the illustrations I give you, they have oil on canvas, or they have tempera, fresco, marble, whatever. But you can hit this with provenance. You can go subject matter, which is kind of what we were just on. Gender awareness, artist biography, whatever you want, you can put that into search. This is media and technique. And so I went down, I scrolled down on this, and here we go. 15 subjects, 15th century painting del Giocondo. Lisa, that's actually the woman who is known as the Mona Lisa. And Leonardo da Vinci, you get the full text here. And so research, conservation, comparative evaluations, and so on. And so when you run your search and you start to add other qualifiers in your search. And so here we go, different possibilities of evaluating a work of art. Evaluating Mona Lisa research work of art. And this is provenance, what I told you a moment ago. The topic of attribution and authentication of works is a well-known one, and it's currently the subject of heated debate. And that is a very true statement. And with the works that you find, and especially if you've chosen a woman artist, you might find that this painting by, say, Artemisia Gentileschi or one of our women painters of the day, that this work may have been attributed to a man, because there's this huge gender bias in art history. And so anyway, different possibilities of evaluating a work of art. Next slide. Leonardo's Da Vinci, Mona Lisa, PDF full text. And I put on there this time, Mona Lisa history. Like I say, you can filter or expand your search by using one of those terms, just like I described. And so And so that, there's some more, the people and the painting, et cetera, et cetera. The people and the painting, author, Catherine Fletcher, and, whoa, these are subject terms. And this is a book review. So you might be able to get what you want from a book review, but sometimes these things end up being somewhat of a dead end. And so I put that on there to show you what that looks like. And so more hits on the history. And I found this one. I thought this was really kind of interesting enough to talk to you about it. Bell's palsy, the answer to the riddle of Leonardo da Vinci's Mona Lisa. Anybody know what Bell's palsy is? Oh, God bless you. You don't know, that's nobody afflicted with. It's where like your face goes kind of numb. And you have palsy means that you can't move the muscles or anything. Cerebral palsy means that it's because your brain is not telling your muscles what to do. Palsy just means that your muscles don't work, and that's what this is written about. And this is from the Journal of Dental Research. And so there's a doctor really kind of interested in medicine from that part of the body. And so here, I want to show you, this is what I want you to do. I want you to do a cut and paste from the abstract and put that in your submission. And so anyway, previous, so let me show you. So when you get that information I'm asking you for, you almost have to copy and paste section by section. If you do the whole thing, it doesn't format properly on a PDF. So you just like take the abstract, I'll show you that in a minute. But this is what I'm talking about. This would be one I'd use. This is very much something that people don't know about the Mona Lisa. And so anyway, there's another thing that way you can find search terms too. You can type in your subject and then hit keyword. And all of these things will start coming up, suggestions, if you will. And so Mona Lisa, Leonardo da Vinci, history analysis. See, it's basically showing you the same kind of things I was just telling you about. And then it has some publications about different aspects of the Mona Lisa. And so I left that on there. I pulled out this day in history. I must have cut this twice. This day in history. Nope, not that. Okay. I got this one. This is right out of history. Mona Lisa history. Why Mona Lisa Smiles and Other Tales by Vasari. I talked to you guys the other day about Giorgio Vasari. He's the guy that's kind of considered the first art historian, did the coffee table book about Leonardo and all the Italian artists, sculptors, painters, architects, etc. And so anyway, but here's how you get to this. You want it, you get into store. Have any of you guys ever used Store? Kaylee,
Oh,
yeah. Well, help me out if I miss anything, Kaylee, because I was trying to document this. So what you do is this is what will get you there. Let me go previous here. You click on it, and this is what you'll get. And you say you want to read and download. And what it will do, before you can download this, you got to register with them. Am I getting it, Kaylee? I see you doing this. Yeah, actually, and once you do it, you save your search, you save your password and ID, and you can just get right onto it. So first thing they'll ask you is for your institution's name, and you can scroll down until you get to Maryville University. We're on this search engine, this service is actually something that this university bought through the library, and it's part of our library, and not everybody gets this. This is like a real gem in terms of research. And so here, and so anyway, log into JSTOR. Well, I didn't have a login, so I had to click register, and I did. And this is how you log in: username, email address, password, log in. And so then I get it, and I can download it, and this is what it looks like downloaded. So JSTOR, it can get you to a lot of things that you can't get to otherwise. It's really opened up a lot. And so now that I have that, shown you through this, I got to pull this down here because and I'm done with this now too. And so let me make sure our people at home can see this. Share. Yeah, we're good. So this is what I want your submission to look like. And so I just picked 4 out of all of the stuff that I showed you. And again, when I cut and paste this in here, I had to do this section by section. The title, the authors was a separate highlight, copy, paste. Subject term, we talked about, this was the first one we saw. Gender awareness, matrimony, et cetera, et cetera. And then I want you to put in the abstract or the description. And so this is page 1 of what I put together, and this is what I want yours to look like. And then on the second page, I have the second source, the title, the author, the source, subject terms, and then the abstract. And then the one on Bell's palsy, as I was showing you, this is the title, this is the author, this is where it comes from, Journal of Dental Research. I want you to give me the subject terms here and the abstract. And then the one that I got from JSTOR, Why Mona Lisa Smiles and Other Tales by Vasari. Copy, cut, copy, excuse me, cut, highlight, copy, paste. And you see it gives you this right here, JSTOR. And so at that point, there is no abstract. It's all on JSTOR. But this is what I want you to submit. That's quiz 2. So, and let me show you assignment. And let me make sure I got the right screen share. Yeah, all good. And so here's where I want you to put it in. It's due Tuesday. It's available now, 5 p.m. And it'll be open until the end of the day on the 16th. And so I have some of the same PowerPoints and documents here to help you out in case you need to get to them quickly. Now I got to move this up so I can get to this. Any questions?
So do we just find peer-reviewed journals about our piece that we did for quiz 1?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. And yeah, I thought it would be a good idea. Hopefully it turns out to be a good idea. That you guys are familiar with the work, you wrote about it. And most of what you guys wrote, as I asked, was kind of a personal account. And so that's okay. What you have to say about the work is fine. This is adding to, this is piling on, this is giving you some context. And so let me see, I gotta make sure I got everybody. Yeah, we're good. All right. The Baroque in Italy and Spain. So as I said earlier, they're actually rolling Spain into the Italian orbit now. And so what we're going to be talking about is the 17th century, the 1600s. Or to give you a little background about this, it's no accident that they put this map as the first illustration. The Vatican, the seat of Catholicism. It's where the Pope lives. Still to this day, it is the official capital of Roman Catholic religion. And so it is, and it's right in the center of Rome. Everything all around here is Rome, but you can see it's all walled off. And this is pretty much what it looks like. It's one of the smallest, it's actually its own country. It's one of the smallest countries in the world. But at any rate, I talked to you guys when we were looking at the High Renaissance in Northern Europe, and we were talking about some of the differences between how and what the Northern Renaissance artists were depicting, what they were depicting and how they were doing it. And what really influenced Northern European artists was the Reformation. There had become this split that was accentuated. It was a rift that grew wider and wider in the 16th century. And by the time we get to 17th century, Rome is the empire that strikes back. They felt as though they needed to reassert their predominance as the center of Christianity. And so they start spending a lot of money. And they build up Vatican City, to be sure, and they really kind of refurbish Rome. They make Rome and the Vatican one of the most beautiful places in all of Europe. It was a massive undertaking. And what they did is just really redefine the Roman Catholic faith. And so anyway, Gian Lorenzo Bernini, and you see this is a middle of the 17th century. Bernini, he was probably the greatest sculptor of the age. And we'll see a lot of illustrations of his work. And so one of the things that happens when they refurbish the Vatican and Rome is that they build not exactly cathedrals, they build churches. They build fountains all over the city. Wes, you were in my ADAH 100. You guys, if you haven't been there, let me tell you about this. One of the things that happened during the Roman Empire was that the Romans figured out how to move large quantities of water through the aqueducts. And so they harnessed all of the snow-capped mountains and mountain streams, and they were able to feed water into Rome and other places of their choosing. And so Rome was already still had this enormous resource of fresh water. And so what happens in the 17th century is that they rebuild all of the fountains. And so they're building churches, they're building fountains, and they decorate all of this stuff with sculpture. And Bernini is like the guy. And there's something else going on here too that I want you to be aware of, because if you ever study Bernini's sculpture, you'll say, how in the heck could this guy have done so much? Well, he was like Bernini Incorporated. And what we find at this time, both in Italy with Bernini and with the studios of Peter Paul Rubens and Rembrandt and other artists of the era, is that they more or less build studio/factories, and they hire artisans to actually paint or sculpt, or at least assist in the production of all of this artwork. And so anyway, Bernini was one of those guys. He had a workshop, he had people, and we're still trying to figure out this kind of research I was showing you, still trying to figure out which one of those actually were sculpted by Bernini or some of his underlings. But we do know about this. And this is in the Coronaro Chapel in Rome. And this is titled The Ecstasy of Saint Teresa. And you can see this is really quite an undertaking. It's a lot of sculpture. We got some massive painting and we got low relief sculpture all around. And it's just, it's Baroque. And what happens in Baroque is that a lot of the ornamentation starts to come back. And I got some better pictures up close. The Ecstasy of St. Teresa. And here's what's going on. There's an angel here. Angel's got a a spear, and there's St. Teresa. Anybody know about St. Teresa? St. Teresa of Avila. That's who this is. Well, she was a holy person. She was a monastic. She was somebody that's devoted her life to Christianity, and she wrote extensively about what it meant to be Christian. And so she is still to this day revered as one of the great Christian Catholic philosophers. And she was from Avila, which is in Spain. As I say, we're starting to see Spain and Italy connect here. And one of the characteristics, one of the side stories on this is that Teresa suffered from what we don't know what this is, but it was an unknown malady, some kind of disease or cancer or something. At any rate, back in the 17th century, they didn't really do medicine like today, but she always experienced these sharp pains in her side, and she described them as though she was being attacked with a spear, which is what's being depicted here. And so in her Christian monastic outlook, she talked about her pain, and she talked about her pain as ecstasy, and that this was in part due to her love of Christ. Now, I know that some of this is really kind of a stretch, but bear with me. The idea being that Christ suffered because he loved humankind. And she was suffering because she loved Jesus. And that was what one of the things she wrote about. And so what was pain, excruciating pain, she reinterpreted that as the love of God, the ecstasy of St. Teresa. And so anyway, I got a close-up of her face here. This is another aspect of the Baroque, and that is that it's often referred to as being theatrical. That things are not stoic. They're not stable. In fact, everything seems to be in motion, and people are caught in the moment of doing something. And that is certainly the case here with the angel with the spear and her, St. Teresa, moaning in agony. And it's kind of this strange place in between. You don't know if it's agony or ecstasy, but that's the artist's intent. And so here she is. I want to point out something else here too, and that is this. We haven't seen anything quite like this before. Those are brass rods, and they depict the light of the Holy Spirit shining down on this event. And so here it is, another view of it. And you see over here, talking about theatrical, they've taken the idea of theatrical quite seriously. And we have over here a box. These are the donors, the Coronado family, and they are watching this as though they were at a play. They were in a theater box, and that's all sculpted into this setup. So they are actually over here. And as I said, this is exquisitely ornate. And so this is Baroque sculpture, and you can see part of the Holy Spirit here. I'm going to get back here. You can't see that here. Anyway, they got it covered, and here are the boxes, and they're on both sides, by the way. And that's what we've seen that happen already. Donors get into the picture, so to speak. And so Carlo Maderno. And so what we have here is kind of a continuation, classical style, not Gothic, to be sure. Gothic would have been much, much more ornate. But what we start to see is some elements of decoration, and especially something like this, where there would be a place for an official seal or something. And so they put statues. This is how Baroque art, sculpture, architecture evolves. We see it, it's coming, it gets more elaborate, more ornate, and with some fidelity to the classic Greek and Roman styles. And so here is St. Peter's. And this is, you see this when they do things like Easter celebrations and things. And St. Peter's, this is world famous. This is where the Pope lives and addresses the crowd that would be in here. The Pope would speak from up here. Designed by Gian Lorenzo Bernini, the same guy that did the sculpture, Ecstasy of St. Teresa. There was a lot of this still going on too. If you were a sculptor, you were probably an architect as well. And if you're like Leonardo, you've done all kinds of things, and Michelangelo painted and sculpted, et cetera, et cetera. I want to point something out here too, because this is just me. I'm kind of fascinated with this. I know what this is, right in the center. St. Peter's, this is the gateway to get to see the Pope and see all the buses here, the parking lot. They didn't have buses in the 17th century, but you know. But this thing right here, what is it? Nobody's answering.
Some sort of obelisk.
An obelisk, yes, it is. And it's a form, it is a monument from ancient Egypt. And that is kind of the one thing of ancient Egypt that seems to have permeated much of European culture for the next 2,000 or 3,000 years. And so an obelisk right in the middle of this. And so here we go. We start to see more and more sculpture, more Bernini, the Royal Stairway. And again, the sculpture is very active, it's very moving. It's not static at all. And action, theatrics. Some more Bernini, as I said, you will get the idea that not one guy could have done all this. But look what they're doing. I mean, the columns actually twist. And it's adorned with sculpture all over the place. And stained glass, light. And you see the scale of it because here's the railing for the communion, and back here is the altar. David. David. Gotcha. So we've seen David depicted before, actually 3 times so far. Del Verrocchio, Donatello, Michelangelo, and Bernini. So this is a theme. The city-states in the Italian peninsula, smarter, defending against larger foes. But take a look at how this is put together. Let me think about it. This is much more theatrical, much more active than any of the depictions we've seen so far. And people talk about this oftentimes as like potential energy about ready to burst into kinetic energy. He is coiled back and ready to sling that stone and kill Goliath. You can see his face. It's not gazing off or kind of, he's intent. This guy could have been an actor. He's got it. He's got the concentration. He's got the will, the bravery, and he knows that this shot better work or else he's toast. But this is what happens in the Baroque era, and it becomes much more ornamental. It becomes much more theatrical. And again, they're way past the problems of what and how to make human anatomy appear lifelike, both in painting and sculpture. They're way past that. They're putting all of these things that had been developed, again, into all of this research into practice. Apollo and Daphne. Daphne turns into a tree that's from Greek mythology, but they still like that. They have a return to ancient Greece and Rome. And it's part of their heritage. And here's Gian Lorenzo Bernini, and it is the Fountain of Four Rivers. And I give you this, an obelisk and the sculptures. And like I say, they already had the waterworks in place, but they designed all of these fountains where the statues are like pouring water and different kinds of things. Let me show you a close-up of this. And again, the Four Rivers Fountain, theatrical. Anatomically, very, very kinetic. Don't see the horse, even the horse, he's not just posing. He's like, hey, I'm thinking here, the snake, not just a snake, but the snake right there, ready to bite. The figures in distress and so on. And so, yeah, this is the rebuilding of Rome. And this period, as I was saying, the northern artists, philosophers, people were influenced by the Reformation. This whole thing as a package was called the Counter Reformation, which means, as I said, to start this, the empire strikes back. They are reasserting their primacy as the center of Christianity. And so Borromini, another architect from the time, and they were really fond of these things that look like emblems and so on. I remember, I've been looking at this same stuff for many years. And I remember at a conference of the the College Art Association, somebody was doing a presentation on Borromini. And she was talking about the Baroque and the oval. And what she said, and was very convincing, she had done her research to be sure, that during the Renaissance time, you had some basic shapes, the triangle, the square, and the circle, and everything was based on that simple geometry. When you get to the Baroque, and as again, like I say, they are building on a lot of the research, discovery, and techniques of the Renaissance. She said the oval was the shape that would represent the Baroque era. And so where in previous years you would have straight lines, you see the curve. And in fact, it seems like they try to put curves in everything that they possibly could. And it becomes ornate, it becomes very decorative. Here, same place, just different view from the front. The oval, the curves. We got some examples of domes too from the inside. This is another Borromini. And so look, this is not just a round dome. It's actually in its conception, it's as a whole, it is something of an oval, and certainly the centerpiece is oval. And again, like I say, every time it seems as though anytime they could put a curved shape into the architecture, they did. Very complex, very, very extremely ornate. Another Borromini, another example of his fine work. From inside the dome of this place right here. And another architect of the era, Chapel of the Holy Shroud in Turin. Anybody know what the Holy Shroud is?
Sounds familiar, but
Well, here is, I was asked because I don't want to tell you, repeat stuff you guys already know, but I like to teach you new things. And so it's referred to as the Shroud of Turin. And Turin is a city in northern Italy. And this chapel is where it's at, the Chapel of the Holy Shroud. And what happened is that in medieval times, this cloth appeared. And it was brought from the Middle East, and it was covered in blood. that had since dried. And it bore the face of Jesus. And it was believed that this was the cloth that they wrapped the dead Christ body in when they buried him after the crucifixion. And this has been believed to be, it was a big part of Christian Catholic belief. There had been some research done on this, just like I'm showing you guys. This is research that's done. The Shroud of Turin had been subjected in recent decades to chemical analysis and other kinds of tests to figure out if it was authentic. Authentication. I showed you one of those sources. Authentication. What they found was that they don't think this is actually dates back 2,000 years. But they also, because they did carbon-12 test on radiological carbon testing, and they found that the carbon was not 2,000 years old. However, there was a counter argument because the shroud and this chapel had caught on fire. And the shroud could have been contaminated with smoke from that fire, hence contaminated with newer carbon, which messed up the carbon dating. I don't know. But at any rate, that's what this is. And that's part of the Roman Catholic faith. I gotta kind of let you know that happened in a big time, in a big way during the Crusades in 10th, 11th centuries. And it happened big time when Constantine made Christianity the official religion of the Roman Empire. So anyway, I digress. This is what this place is. And okay. Flight into Egypt, oil on canvas. And another scene from the Gospels. This is where Herod was going to kill all the male children because he had gotten word that there was a Messiah born, and he had all those babies, male babies killed, and Joseph, Mary, and Jesus left. They went into Egypt. They were in exile. And so that's really what this is. There's something else here too that's starting to kind of creep into painting again, and that is this kind of fascination with classical themes. And of course, this is a Christian theme, but they also like to make sure that they get some of this classical architecture into the paintings. And if you take a look at the whole scene itself, that's as much as what this painting is about as it is the Jesus, Mary, and Joseph part. And so, Annie Bale, Karachi, Loves of the Gods. Does it look like anything we've seen, like the Sistine Chapel ceiling? Again, continuation, but this is actually pagan. This is all about classical Greek and Roman gods, but they're into it. This is acceptable. And so finally, the last person I want to show you today is this guy, Caravaggio, and is pretty much considered the greatest painter of the Italian Baroque era. We look at Bernini as being the greatest sculptor. We see Caravaggio as being the greatest painter. And you see musicians, and this is just kind of, they look like they're from the classical era, but there's not really anything that identifies them or ties them to one era or another, except that violin. And I talked to you guys about Stradivarius violins of the era. Anyway, bottom line, this is an early one, and it's theatrical, and we have people looking back, people doing different things. This guy's reading music. But this is what Caravaggio becomes known for. The Calling of Saint Matthew. And Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Saint Matthew is one of the writers of the gospel. And what you have here is this light and dark that I've been talking about for a while. And I talked about that being chiaroscuro. And that is, chiaroscuro is dark modeling, and that's in the extreme. What happens with Caravaggio is that he really perfects this idea of dark modeling. And they call it tenebrism. And you can see that, you know, like under the table, you can see some light coming through, but the difference in the light between this leg and that leg, the idea that the light comes shining through the window. And they're all pointing to this guy. And guess who that is? Saint Matthew. He was one of the 12 disciples. And Christ's disciples came from different backgrounds. And Matthew's background was a tax collector. And that's what he's doing here, is collecting and counting the coins. And everybody else is kind of pointing to him, trying to, this guy here, hey, what, you know, the calling of Saint Matthew and the idea of using light, the divine light, enlightenment, however you want to call it. And so this is the calling of Saint Matthew. And this is the conversion of Saint Paul, yet another disciple. And this is, a lot of people consider this to be Caravaggio's probably his best work. And again, it happened at night. And so we got all of this dark modeling. We don't have really any indication of what the landscape looks like here. Second thing is that what happens is that St. Paul, on his way to Damascus, was struck by a bolt of lightning, knocked him off his horse, and St. Paul heard God tell him, follow Jesus. And he did. He gave up being a Roman soldier and joined up with the apostles. And so anyway, that's what this is, the conversion of St. Paul. And you can see here, he's in his Roman soldier's uniform. He's got his sword there. And he was struck off his horse. And one of the interesting aspects of this painting is that where it sits, you see it's enormous. It's 7.5 feet high. But where it sits in this Sarasi chapel, this is at eye level. And so you see St. Paul looking up, and he's on the ground. But when you see the painting itself, you as the viewer are at that same level looking up. And so Caravaggio was the guy who, as I said earlier, is considered to be the greatest painter of the era. And you see here, theatrical, again, Baroque, entombment, the agony, the dead Christ, the wounds, and this tenebrism, this dark modeling, that becomes very fashionable. And so I think that's the last Caravaggio. Oh, no. This is the last Caravaggio. And this is from the Garden of Gethsemane. Nighttime, Roman soldiers. There's Judas kissing Christ on the cheek. I will identify Christ. I will kiss him on the cheek. And then the soldiers took him away. The taking of the Christ. Theatrical, agony, confusion, etc. So with that, you can see why they have so many illustrations of Caravaggio in the book. He is really considered the painter of the era. And when we come back next week, I'll show you some examples of other artists who kind of look at Caravaggio for inspiration. He influences a whole generation of artists. And so with that being said, do you have any questions? No? I have a question. You guys gonna have a good weekend? No? Okay. I didn't want to hear that, but I'll take your word.
So much homework.
Oh, yeah. Let's try to give you guys extra time to get this thing done. I originally had it sooner, but, oh, that was the other thing I want to tell you, though. The research paper, I bumped it a week because on the 21st, we don't have class. It was due on the 21st. I made it to 28th. And so, have a good weekend, even if you have a ton of homework. And I'll see you then.
You have a good one.
You too, Wes.
Thank you.
Thank you.